I'm a little excited, and by a little, I mean really excited, because today we're going to take a bunch of the stuff that we've been talking about and put it together to learn something new, which is, if you didn't notice, sort of the nature of music theory, anyways. But today we get to go from talking about notes and scales to putting those two things together to perhaps play us some chords. I'm so excited. They're so juicy. Okay, so let's break it open and unlearn and relearn, just like always. You've probably been told something along the lines of chords are just three notes that you play at the same time. Sure, that is technically a chord. Technically, a chord is any time you play more than one note at the same time. Voila, it's a chord. Congratulations, you played it. But the problem is that's not helpful at all, right? It's not helpful at all, because what if you just played a bunch of notes at the same time and said, look at me, ma, no hands, I'm playing a chord, right? Like, it's not helpful because nothing is explaining why those notes. Huh? Why do they show up everywhere, and why, once you understand chords, music is going to stop feeling so random. Okay, I'm just going to say that. Once you understand them, it'll definitely stop feeling so random to you if it's still feeling so random, okay? Today, I want to give you the real explanation, not the piano diagram version or the oh shit version, but just a very succinct explanation that's going to make it so super simple. Okay, so let's break it open and unlearn and relearn, just like always. You've probably been told something along the lines of chords are just three notes that you play at the same time. Sure, that is technically a chord. Technically, a chord is any time you play more than one note at the same time. Voila, it's a chord. Congratulations, you played it. But the problem is that's not helpful at all, right? It's not helpful at all, because what if you just played a bunch of notes at the same time and said, look at me, ma, no hands, I'm playing a chord, right? Like, it's not helpful because nothing is explaining why those notes. Huh? Why do they show up everywhere, and why, once you understand chords, music is going to stop feeling so random. Okay, I'm just going to say that. Once you understand them, it'll definitely stop feeling so random to you if it's still feeling so random, okay? Today, I want to give you the real explanation, not the piano diagram version or the oh shit version, but just a very succinct explanation that's going to make it so super simple. Okay, so a chord is multiple notes played together. Yes, we are not throwing that out the window because that's still true. But the notes that are chosen are not arbitrary. They are stacked on purpose, right? Bum, 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 if we play them at the same time, right? Stacked is a term you're going to hear a lot from me about chords, because the notes stack on top of one another, right? It makes sense to explain it this way. They're not stacked because someone decided three sounds nice. But it's actually because of the scales that we talked about that already exist, okay? Every scale, like C major, for example. We'll use C major a lot for examples here because it's the most direct scale on the piano. It's all white notes, C to C. Congratulations, C major, you played the scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. No problem, right? Now, every note in that scale has a degree in which it rests on that scale. Do is the first degree in the C major scale, starting on C, of course. And I'm only specifying because some of you chuckle yucks get really fussy, and we're not going to be fussy here, okay? We're trying to learn things. Now, each scale degree has what's called a diatonic triad attached to it. I just played you the diatonic triad for C major, which is C, E, G. It's a triad. A triad is a chord that has three notes in it. The other reason that the explanation we referenced earlier isn't the most helpful is because not all chords have three notes, and some chords have more than three notes. In fact, many chords have more than three notes. My favorite chords, seventh chords in the land of jazz, we'll get there later, have more than three notes, for example, typically four. Anyways, back to business. Scale degrees in a scale each have attached to them a diatonic triad, and we'll break down that term. Triad means a chord with 3 notes, and diatonic is just a big fancy pretentious word that means in the scale of, right? So they are chords with 3 notes, triads, in the scale of diatonic, whatever scale you're in. So, for example, if you were my piano student and I asked you to find all of your diatonic triads for C major, you would just, starting on the first degree, C, E, G, and you would play all of the chords with 3 notes, C, E, G, all of the triads, going all the way up the scale, and then all the way back down the scale. I mean, if you were my piano student, we're doing both. We go forward and back. You cannot take the dogs for a walk and not take them back home. That's unethical. Anyways, honestly, even if I told you nothing else other than chords are not random, they come from scales, I feel like you'd be in a pretty good place. But let's think about this for a minute, right? I want to continue making connections here that might be helpful, right? I want you to think about that scale again, because I probably explained it quite quickly. And though you can back up and replay it, who wants to do that? A scale is just a collection of notes, right, that we've discussed. And they sound good together in a particular order and in a specific emotional world. Because, again, we're picking colors and textures and shapes for our music, not just major, minor, right? So I want you to think of this not as an exercise or not as homework, but I want you to think of it as expanding your palette of usable tools, because this is another big tool, okay? You just skip notes to make chords in this sense. Well, that sounds crazy. Imagine that you are inside the palette that is your scale, right? C to C that we just discussed. Now, every time I go C, E, G, you're noticing, right, that I skipped D and F to accomplish that, right? If you put your thumb on C, you will notice that, oh my gosh, your hand fits perfect for a 5-finger scale because you have 5 fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh. And if we skip every other note, that is a traditional triad. It's a major triad. And you feel that bum, bum, bum. Now, you're pulling vertically from something that already existed horizontally. Does that make sense? Probably not, but if it does, score. If it doesn't, let me explain. I talked about stacking our notes, right? In a vertical sense, here they are. And you can have stacks all the way up the scale, and like I said, all the way back down the scale. If this isn't making sense, again, you can always leave questions in the comments or go to my Patreon, and I am very apt to respond to those questions quickly as well. Okay, so just we're covering our ground that we've already covered to make sure it looks good. We left the ground glittering and perfect, I'm sure. But chords stack every other note. In the case we're talking about diatonic triads, let's be very specific, because chords it's such a big word. It's such a wide berth of what it could mean. Because like I said, it could be any 2 notes. Technically, it's a chord. It's just a really dissonant sounding chord because the space between the 2 notes is negligible. If like you'll understand when you get on your piano and you start experimenting with these, or get on your instrument of choice and start experimenting with these, you'll notice that certain combinations of notes do not sound good together. And we will be going in depth as to how we decide that and what helps us predetermine that before playing notes that sound terrible, because that's never fun. Okay, and now I know what you're thinking. We've talked about how to make diatonic triads in a major scale, but other than that, how do you know what chord to play? How do you know? I know it's overwhelming at first, but I want you to, instead of asking yourself, what chord should I use? Ask yourself, what world am I in? As in, what key are you in? Because if you know what key you're in, you know all of the available chords to you, correct? And I'm going to explain to you in our next video how we can bifurcate and understand the difference between major chords and minor chords on the piano at least, but you can take the information to any instrument. But all you gotta do is lower that third, and if you know, you know. But if you don't worry, I'm gonna make a video about it, okay? There's no formulas that I need you to memorize right now. I want to be very clear about that, okay? You don't need to memorize chord formulas to understand music at all. You don't need to do that. The formulas are descriptions, not causality. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The formulas are descriptions, not causes. They're just labels that we added after the sound already worked and somebody said, oh, that sounds dope, right? We can build them naturally, we can hear them more clearly, and we can start treating theory like less of a list of rules and more like a list of chords that sound good together in this case. I'm trying not to make it too broad, but in this particular video, we're just focused on chords. More than one note played at the same time. In this case, we talked a lot about triads, which is 3 notes. Triad like a tricycle, right? Easy peasy? Easy peasy? Of course it is. If this explanation of chords is feeling more intuitive and maybe a little less aggressive than some of the other ways you've been taught, I would let you know that I do have this approach to theory in my music theory book, and I don't teach chords as objects that you have to memorize. I am teaching them as consequences. Consequences of a scale, consequences of your choice within that scale, and consequences of emotional direction. Where do you want these chords to go? What are you trying to say to me musically, right? Because that's the whole point. That, anyways, the book has a lot of tips and tricks, and again, we're not dumbing down music theory, but we are making it approachable because I don't think that it was initially taught with approachability in mind. So no, chords aren't just stacks of notes. They're moments where a scale decides to speak in a harmony. Because, by the way, that's a harmony. When 2 notes work together at the same time, or 2 frequencies resonate well together at the same time, or more, that's a harmony. So a chord is also just another expression of harmony. And once you hear that, I think music stops feeling as much like a maze and starts feeling more like a landscape that we can look out at. And I promise I'll talk more to you about it in the next chapter.